The rain fell in sheets over the lonely road as the last trace of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon. And somewhere between the silence and the storm, a story was about to begin that no one in the small town of Milford would ever forget. A rusted blue pickup truck rolled slowly through the puddles, its headlights dim and weary, much like the man driving it. His name was Nathan Cole, a former factory worker turned drifter, carrying nothing but a duffel bag, a photograph, and a past that refused to die. In the photograph was a woman with soft eyes and a little girl holding a teddy bear, their smiles forever frozen in a time before everything fell apart. Nathan had lost them both 3 years ago to a factory explosion caused by greed and negligence, and though the world had moved on, he had not. That same factory, Weldon Auto Components, still stood on the outskirts of town, its silver walls shining cold and proud, built on the backs of people like him and Clara, whose pain had once made headlines. Clara, the widow who fought back, whose courage had inspired an entire generation of workers to stand for their dignity. But as months passed, her story faded into memory. Until tonight. Because tonight, pain was coming back to Milford, and this time it rode on the back of roaring engines and broken hearts that had learned how to fight. The Hells Angels, the same men who had once defended Clara and her daughter Hazel, were on the move again, but this time, not for Clara, for Nathan. They had found him in a roadside diner 2 days ago, his hands trembling as he tried to eat, his eyes hollow but burning with purpose. He told them everything. The lies, the cover-ups, the corporate men who had walked free while innocent lives burned. The leader, the same old biker known as RL, listened quietly, his weathered face betraying no emotion until Nathan pulled out the charred teddy bear that had survived the fire. "This was hers," he said, his voice cracking. "My little girl." RL's jaw tightened, the same way it had the day he saw Hazel clutching her broken doll. Some things don't fade, he thought. Pain doesn't disappear, it just waits. And so, with a solemn nod, he told Nathan, "We ride at dawn." The next morning, the storm broke. The factory was alive with noise again, machines clanging, supervisors barking orders, workers moving like ghosts through smoke and dust. No one noticed the distant rumble at first, the sound of engines echoing over the hills like an old memory returning. But when the gates began to shake and the roar grew louder, even the foreman froze. The Hells Angels rolled in, 6 bikes this time, their chrome wet with rain, their eyes hidden behind dark shades. RL was at the front, and beside him rode Nathan, his grief hardened into something cold and dangerous. The workers stepped aside as the bikers dismounted, their boots heavy against the soaked pavement. The factory manager, a new man but with the same arrogance, walked out to meet them, smirking. "You people again?" he scoffed. "This isn't your fight." RL stepped forward, his voice low but sharp as thunder. "It became our fight the day your kind thought working folks were expendable." The man laughed, until Nathan pulled from his pocket the photograph, the one of his wife and child, now crumpled, edges burned. "You remember this explosion?" he asked, voice trembling with rage. "You signed off the inspection reports. You called it an accident. My wife died in your factory, my little girl in my arms. And you said it was just bad luck." For a moment, silence swallowed the air. Then RL spoke again, slowly, deliberately. "Bad luck ends today." The workers gathered at the edges, some filming, others holding their breath. The confrontation that followed wasn't just between men. It was between the forgotten and the powerful, between pain and denial, between those who build and those who exploit. Shouts broke the silence first, then chaos. But this time, it wasn't fear that spread, it was courage. The workers, inspired by Nathan's defiance, began stepping forward one by one, removing their gloves and standing beside the bikers. The manager stumbled back as dozens of them surrounded him, their voices rising in unity, the kind that shakes walls and changes histories. No one remembers who threw the first punch or who screamed first, but when it ended, the factory floor was still again. The roar of engines soon filled the air as the Hells Angels rode out, Nathan in the middle, his eyes fixed on the horizon, tears lost in the rain. Behind them, the Weldon factory burned, not with fire, but with truth, as cameras captured everything, and by nightfall the footage was everywhere. News anchors called it the Milford Stand. Commentators debated, politicians promised change, and millions online shared one sentence that echoed louder than any speech. Sometimes justice rides on two wheels. But for Nathan, it wasn't about headlines. It was about peace. Days later, he returned to the quiet hill overlooking the town, where a small wooden cross marked two graves. He placed the photograph between them, now mended with tape, and whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't quite the end, because as he stood, a familiar rumble filled the air behind him. RL and the angels had come, not to fight, but to ride one last time together. They stood with him in silence, the kind that speaks without words, and when the sun broke through the clouds, it painted the hill in gold. RL put a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "You did right," he said softly. "Sometimes the world forgets and someone's got to remind it." Nathan nodded, a faint smile breaking through the pain. As they rode away, the camera panned across the road, where the puddles reflected the fading storm and the rising sun, a reminder that even after destruction, light finds its way back. That night, across social media, the video of Nathan and the bikers went viral. People called them outlaws, heroes, vigilantes, but to those who had ever been wronged, they were something more, a symbol of courage, proof that empathy isn't weakness, and that sometimes the people the world fears most are the ones who protect it. In the comments section of Kindness Corner's latest upload, one viewer wrote, "Maybe heroes don't always wear capes or badges. Maybe they wear leather, carry scars, and fight for people no one else will." And somewhere in Milford, a little girl's laughter seemed to echo again, carried by the wind through the trees that lined the old factory road. Because justice once found doesn't die. It rides on, just like the men who believed kindness is not softness, but strength in its truest, rawest form.